Hi, what's going on, y'all? Here today to tell you got to make this meeting coming up this coming weekend. So we are at a very exciting time in this progression. We're about, I think, 3 weeks into it. We were trying to do the math today. We're getting confused. So we're 3 weeks into an 8-week progression and 3 weeks into a new way of life, okay? First of all, this meeting this weekend is going to be loaded with great information. So we're going to start with a methodology focus of keto. And I want everyone to understand, I know that keto, low carb, those realms are super popular right now. We experimented with ketogenic before it became a popular term back in 2013, and me and a cohort of mine out in California, we felt like it was the way to go. Like, we went strict keto for almost 6 months, and and saw a lot of great things happen from it. We felt great, learned some things through that whole process. I mean, we were doing the whole measuring glucose, blood ketones, breath ketones. We were tracking it in spreadsheets, and we were weighing and measuring all our food and stuff. And then we started to teach it to our clients, and with half of our clients, it completely backfired, So, and we learned a lot from that experience, and that's kind of how we've evolved, the SHT progressions and the ways that we talk about low carb and fasting protocols. And we'll talk more about that at this meeting. But I just want everyone to understand, like, I have a lot of respect for the low carb and ketogenic movements. And I think that they serve a really good, useful purpose for a lot of people that come into real food from doing something completely wrong. And if keto is your introduction into this lifestyle of eating real food, I think that's great. But we think over the long term, there's easier and better ways to get into fat burning and ketosis, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about at this meeting. So we're going to talk all about keto, what it is, a little bit about how to do it, but mainly, how it will serve us over the long term to experiment with it. And then we're going to talk about low carb and what low carb means to us and what our guidelines are for low carb, and we're going to talk about how to do that for the next 2 weeks after this meeting. Now, some of us may not be ready for low carb right now. Maybe we're just still trying to figure out the basics, and that's perfectly fine, but I would still come to this meeting and learn this so that when you are ready, you can implement it. But for those of us that are ready, low carb tends to be a part of this progression where a lot of people notice some pretty significant shifts. And for some people, like, it's a very difficult and challenging experience. But anyway, we'll talk about low carb, and we'll also talk about the roles of specific nutrients in the body. So this is one of the first meetings where we actually get into the roles of fatty acids and amino acids and plant matter and these different nutrients inside the body, to give us a better understanding of why it's so beneficial to eat the foods that we recommend eating. Now, we are at a crucial juncture in this progression, all right? We're 3 weeks into a new way of life. That's a very short period of time. It's amazing, in my opinion, that I don't have to get up in front of groups and say, here's what you need to do, but don't expect any results for 6 months or a year or something like that, because it's taken us years, if not decades, of dysfunction to get to where we were, and we're unraveling a lot of that, So it's amazing that the body can respond so quickly in such a short period of time. So here we are 3 weeks in, and we have a lot of feedback. People, body composition's already changed in a good direction, better performance in the gym, hearing some really good feedback on the fasted training, which is the only way to do it, but some people go through an adaptation adjustment phase, better energy levels, more consistent energy levels, better sleep patterns without even talking about sleep. I love to hear people's sleep improving just from eating real food. A lot of digestion getting better, a lot less bloating, some skin issues going away, and then probably some other more subtle symptomatic changes on some private and personal levels that we probably can't put out there. But anyway, and then overall, like, people just saying they feel better. Like, that's really what we love to hear, because that's what this is all about. When you start to get healthy, you show up to life different. You feel different. Your energy levels are better for sure, but your mood changes. Your perception of the world kind of changes. So the wisdom that we would say for these people experiencing some great shifts in just the first 3 weeks, we're really happy for you. Celebrate in what you would perceive as your successes, but also I think the bigger wisdom is to step back from that and understand that these big major shifts aren't always going to happen like that. So over time, as we get more nutritionally sufficient, which takes a lot of time, we start to see subtle shifts. So like, here I am, I've been doing this since maybe tinkering around with it since 2011, and I'm still going through shifts, but these shifts are very, very subtle and difficult to pick up on sometimes. But the understanding is that the body is doing a lot of work behind the scenes. Some of it's going to be noticeable to you and some of it's not going to be noticeable to you. But over time, you'll start to notice some of these changes. And what's great about them is they accumulate over time. So my digestion continues to get better. My skin continues to get better. Which is another indication of stronger digestion, and of course, like just my overall feeling of amazingness and things like that, like continues to improve. Vitality, vibrancy, whatever you want to call that. My body composition, I shared my story several times with in the groups and talks and with people individually, but I started out 275 pounds, close to 280 pounds. By the time I started doing this as a profession back in 2012, I was down to maybe 220 pounds, somewhere around there. And then since 2012, it's been, a pretty slow, subtle, accumulation of body composition changes. So I'm usually averaging around maybe 200 pounds right now. And I don't really weigh that often, and the scale doesn't dictate anything about how I feel about myself and the way that I look. But it's just interesting to me to see that last 20 pounds took, what is that, like 6 years or so, right? So if we did the math on that, 6 years divided into 20, going into 20 pounds, I mean, that's about 3 or 4 pounds a year, And a lot of us get really impatient with the body composition piece. So, so that's my next thing I want to say for those of you that are experiencing like beneficial changes in energy levels and digestion and just feeling better, but you're not seeing the body composition changes happen yet. We get it. We understand this is important to all of us, okay? But you have to be in this for the long haul. You have to be in this for a lifetime and understand that what we're doing is giving the body what it needs. We're ridding ourselves of a lot of the toxins that we used to be exposed to. And the body is going to prioritize change in its own way, in its own time. For some of us, the body composition piece happens really fast and quick. And for some of us, it's a long, slow progression. I can tell you that there's a ton of people that have been through our progressions and in the first 8 to 10 weeks didn't really notice a whole lot with the body composition piece, but of course they felt better and their digestion got better, their skin got better. But then you look at these people 6 months down the road, a year and 2 years down the road, and they're completely different people. Like half the person that they used to be, So a lot of our greatest transformations from a body composition standpoint don't happen in the first 6, 8, 10 weeks. And I know that's not what a lot of us want to hear, but you have to understand what we're doing is focusing on health and feeling amazing. And the body composition piece is one symptom out of a lot of other things that the body is changing and working on, and we just have to be patient with it. This is not the time to be scrutinizing and nitpicking. Am I eating too much of this? Am I doing too much? If you just follow our basic rules, which means if you eat 100% real food and you moderate your carbohydrates in the evening, and then you let yourself go through these different cycles and phases that we're teaching, then that's everything that you need to do. 3 weeks is not very long, so it's not a time to start like nitpicking things aside from what we're going to learn in the progressions and take you through. And there's something else that I was thinking along those lines. So, I think the biggest difficulty a lot of us have is what happens up here when it comes to food. It's our emotional ties to things and cravings, and I'm there with you. Like, we all have this stuff that we're working through. But I always imagine if I could take any of us, all of us, and put us on an SHT island and we were only allowed to eat fresh meat and fresh veggies and a handful of greens and a little bit of cheese and measured out fresh fruit in the evening with a little bit of sweet potatoes and yams, there is no way that every single person there over time would not evolve into the person that they want to be and the person that they want to look like, So I think for some of us, this is a really good experience to figure out, where are my sticky points? Where are my hot spots? What do I feel like I'm struggling with? What can I do better? And that's where the true wisdom and learning comes from in this progression, okay? So just understanding this is a lifelong journey. Let's not get impatient with anything. For those of you experiencing great shifts, like, we're so happy for you. The wisdom is to understand that you're gonna go through periods of great shifts and periods of what seems like no shifts, but things are happening in the background, okay? And then at the same, on the flip side of that, if you're feeling better, but you're not experiencing the body composition shifts yet, I would say just be patient with the process. And that doesn't mean don't be introspective and try to see what you can do a little bit different, a little bit better. But in general, that's what this progression is for, is to facilitate experiments. And then you just have to be really honest with yourself about, like, what you're consuming, how much you're consuming, and things like that. Follow our basic rules, 100% fresh real food, stay out of that moderated a lot category items. And then make sure that you measure out your carbohydrates in the evening. If you're not measuring it out, then you don't know. You need to know, because you can overeat fruit and starches and things like that pretty easy without realizing it, okay? All that said with a lot of love, because we've been there, and you know, we've all experienced what you're going through to some degree. We've seen it and heard it, and we just know you have to stay the course, okay? Coffee and tea workshop. Well, first of all, the main meeting is at 11, as always, and we need to be checked in by 10:45. Be respectful of each other's time so that we can start at 11. It should not be more than an hour and a half. It's one of our favorite meetings, mind-blowing information. And then after that, we have a coffee and tea workshop, and that's going to be at 1 o'clock. So we had it on the calendar at 3, but now we're moving it up to 1. We feel like that's going to be a little bit more time conducive for everyone. And at this workshop, we're going to learn how to do French press, pour over, and then we're going to flavor the coffee with a bunch of different holistic ways of flavoring it so that we can all experience different things and see if we can find a way to enjoy coffee again for those of us, you know, who aren't right now. I feel like coffee is one of the most beneficial beverages you could possibly consume. I don't think you can consume too much of it, really. And then I think that's about it. You know, we periodically we'll throw out a hike and a meditation session or something like that. So I'd say try to be involved in as much stuff as you can. If you're one of these people thinking about making the meeting, but you're like, oh, I kind of know this, and why should I go? Like, just understand every time you come to one of these meetings, they're dynamic, they're interactive. You have to sit there and go through the information. I guarantee you're going to learn something new, and you might just get inspired and motivated to do a little bit better. That's the whole point of coming together for these things, okay? All right. Love you guys. We will talk to you soon. We'll see you at this meeting.